What's happening, family? So in today's video, I will do a very quick walkthrough and recap and breakdown of my previous EU session from June the 2nd. And let's dive into it, right? So yeah, here we go. Basically, the idea, started after price mitigated this, higher time frame PY. And then price kind of took out liquidity here, and it came and it liquidated this low here, right? It all happened within, the PY, as in price rejected to go lower from that point. That's why I noticed this here internal change of character, right? And this here internal engineered liquidity and internal inducement. We got no reaction here, so I avoided buy, and then I noticed this here, and then from the lower time frame I bought, right? As I mentioned and showed you guys also in a detailed walkthrough, recap, breakdown of this position here. Actually 3 positions, right? This here was conservative target, and this here aggressive target, right? And I get out here with 3 times 7R instead of 3 times a potential 15R. But that's okay, right? Because I was basically looking at something like this at this point, major inducement, look for a lower time frame entry here, and then buy again until this point here, right? That was the basic idea. Now, some of you may wonder, well, because I mentioned, right, this here was my higher time frame internal inducement, whereas this was my higher time frame major inducement, or swing high, as I mentioned, right? Because we had practically something like this, right, from the 15-minute time frame, so internal inducement. Now, why do I mention this here as my major inducement? Not only because it's a swing high, right, from the 50-minute time frame, but I will show you by going to the live chart for a second, right? 4 hour here, right? So we had basically that 4-hour mitigation here. And as you can see, this was basically one impulsive move, right? From the 4-hour, corrective move, impulsive move, as in, continuation, right? So that's why this here from the 4-hour is now my inducement, major inducement, right? Now, why do I neglect these here? Because as we can see, price never closed below the previous. So basically this low transferred to this low, and this low transferred eventually to this low, right? Because again, price never actually closed below it. It did a sweep and it, tried to correct it itself. But that's why this here is, to me, from the 4-hour, at least one single leg. This here, corrective move, continuation, impulsive move. And that's why aggressive target here, and also my higher time frame inducements, right? That's why I mentioned that this here is my, major inducement, whereas this internal inducement from the 15-minute time frame, right? Because practically this can be your engineered liquidity, and this here your inducement, right? And this here swing high or range high from here to here, right? And yeah, that's basically why, for those who were wondering, why I marked this one here as my major IDM / major choke. If price closes above, right, we can definitely continue look for buys at that point, right? That's why this internal inducement, major inducement / choke point, right? So at some time, let me go back. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, this was the idea, right? I got out my positions here. Price could do either continue higher, or in this particular case, I thought, well, we have now also, here from the higher time frame, major structure, major inducement. So price may do this and then that. I was basically waiting for that to happen, right? But evidently, as we can see, sometime later, I looked and yeah, basically noticed that price created a new major inducement point here. So it moved from here to here because this was now my recent pullback and also deep pullback, right? But I noticed then, okay, I missed out a entry here from the lower time frame while I was waiting for price to come here, right, to follow my major structure. Something interesting happened here. After I saw this move happening, I, went to the lower time frame. I noticed it happened during the New York Open also, so good confluences. And this was basically, the lower time frame liquidity. We had engineered liquidity inducement. Price did this, came back, right? So after liquidation here and noticing, this black candle here ending up from a 50-minute time frame, we definitely could have looked at the lower time frame for a potential, entry here by following our entry criteria, and then definitely target this one. Because after price reaches this area, it can do either one of two things, right? Or it takes out liquidity, continues the bearish bias, or it confirms our major chop, and then we can look for continuations of buys, right, from that point. And I believe we could do that even all the way back here, right, to beginning of May, so to say. Basically, I had entered here my positions, right, in the beginning of May. Imagine if I holded them all the way here, but shoulda, coulda, woulda, not something I'm interested in. So just focusing on daily profits by following my rules, concepts, and systems, right? And let's say here, so price definitely continued higher, and at this point, I thought, well, I set my alert here and here. Either price comes back, I can enter here from the lower time frame, or price continues higher and I can look perhaps for shorts until here, get out, and then look for buys, continuations here, right? So basically ping pong in between my positions. But as you may notice, basically everything is decided from the 50-minute time frame. I practically look for, if price comes back here on the lower time frame, for my lower time frame entry criterias. That's basically it. And at this point, price went higher, and I got an alert that this here major inducement was tapped. So at that point, I went to the lower time frame, my 3-minute. By the way, let me show you the entry I missed earlier, right? Remember, this were internal inducement, and then basically, we could say here on the lower time frame, also inducement being liquidated. But why is this one, more important? Because it kind of also confirmed that price here, after that internal shock that happened earlier here, right? So again, after collecting liquidity, this could be your first internal shock to the upside again, right? That's why this pullback very important. But as I mentioned, if I was, monitoring the charts live, I would have noticed, okay, this black candle is, definitely a big candle, right? So you have to be cautious because the next one was practically inside bar. But at this point, look what happened, right? This here candle did definitely take out this one, while this here candle took out here, that liquidity, right? So it's, at this point, where this gray candle had closed, let's say, above this gray candle that did the liquidation here, you could have gone perhaps, for that imbalance gap fill, right? But yeah, here, I mean, right? Because at some point there was imbalance between this candle and this candle. So you could have perhaps entered here with a stop loss there. I'm just showing you what the possibilities are, because at that point even this candle closed above this black candle here. But to me, I would have not entered presumably here, because it does not fit, until obviously this happens, right? And perhaps at that point I would have gone with a more conservative entry from this gray candle, right? Because even again, this pullback was practically an inside bar to this one. Now this gray candle definitely mitigated this black candle, right? Even though this one comes out here on top, it came back to mitigate this one. So even though these are inside bars, the same can be applied to these inside bars to this candle, right? That's basically what I'm trying to say, because look at this. At this point, the candles closed above this gray candle here, where these ones were inside bars. But nevertheless, within that inside bar, price rejected to go lower. It collected the previous, wicks, or here, this gray one. So after this one closed above this candle here, you could have definitely gone with an entry and stop loss there with a potential TP there, right? Because, yeah, now we have already liquidation here and then mitigation of this black candle. Remember, after this one closed above, it came back to mitigate that area, right? And basically the same happened here with this move. That's why definitely this more a conservative entry instead of here more aggressive entry, right? Because at that point you have somewhat kind of a confirmation, right? Liquidation, mitigation, everything. So definitely worth a shot. Instead of, entering here immediately, a bit risky, because we have engineered liquidity. But after noticing, okay, look, the wicks closed below. This one here, these two were inside bars, close above the candle that did the liquidation here. Same here, mitigation. Yeah, I mean, definitely, I would have entered here if I saw that. But again, I was not behind the charts live, right? But nevertheless, now price was here. And at that point, I thought, well, let's have a look if you can see a reaction from here, perhaps to short on this until here, and then, continuation for buys. But unless we get any signals here, right? If not, just stay out of it. So yeah, at that point, I noticed definitely a reaction, but price was pushing higher, right? As we can see. And, I thought, okay, I would first wait until price comes perhaps down here, something like that, leave some liquidity behind. After liquidation, I would look for an entry, and perhaps now this one could be UI extreme, because it did the liquidation here, right? But, after noticing that this candle, I believe it was the next screenshot. Yeah, you see, now this candle, it eventually closed above here. Very minimal, nevertheless, but now I was moving this one to this one, right? Again, looking basically for somewhat the same. Confirmed, close below this pullback here, and then internal inducement left behind, and then something like this, right? So, yeah, at some point later, I looked from the 15-minute time frame, and I thought, well, we were pretty impulsive. And at some point here, I noticed on a higher time frame, okay, this definitely looks interesting, right? And at that point, I went to the higher time frame back again, and basically what I noticed, that price, I believe it was somewhere here, it came into a order flow area of the 4 hour. You cannot see it here on my chart, obviously, but look at this, where price kind of topped out. Let me go back to the live chart. And this here is the order flow I meant, right? This one here. Okay. From, again, the 4-hour, right? Because this was the last push to the upside before price continued down and closed below it. That's why I call this here as my 4-hour order flow, and add this impulsive move, corrective move, impulsive move also to the picture. What do we have here? A typical entry type, right? Liquidation and or perhaps mitigation, or even liquidation of this area, and then a continuation to the downside to perhaps the most recent liquidity. Now look, on the 15-minute time frame, this here is our inducement, right? And on the 4-hour, this here is practically inducement. So watch out after entering immediately here, right? Because this candle here, it may be liquidated still. So price may come down, give reaction to the upside, right? Perhaps in this leg down, it will create some minor pullbacks from the higher 4-hour time frame. Perhaps the next candle does something like this, and then the next candle something like that, liquidates everything here, and then the next candle again pushes down like this, takes out liquidity here, and then, you know, it may move up until it takes out this here liquidity, because then we would have something like this, right? If that makes sense. So you have to be cautious, because after liquidation of this one, price again may continue down to perhaps this here 4-hour time frame, major inducement here, and then continue higher, right? So just adding some scenarios to what price may do, so we can prepare ourselves, right? Both technically but also mentally. That's why, you know, again, I noticed basically a reaction from that area, from the higher time frame, right? And that's why, now I have to find that screenshot again. I believe it was this one, right? And, oh yeah, here, this one. After I saw that reaction from that area, again, you do not see it here, but I had to be quick a bit, right? To see if interesting things were happening here. You know, that's why from the 15-minute time frame, I went to the 3-minute time frame, and I basically noticed this year's structure later on, right? So what I did was, okay, this here, this is the pullback after, you know, not here, because it was just a sweep, but here, right? Close above this area, right? So it was the pullback here. Price continued, did this. It failed to make a new higher high, right? Instead, it did this. Well, to me, I thought perhaps it did a mitigation of this area, right? Before continuing down. Now, I thought, okay, if that is the case, right? Should price continue at this point here, right? Like that to the downside, confirmed candle close below it here, right? I will again look for liquidity areas, and perhaps this one to mitigate, right? Like that. And if I don't see anything like that, I will just stay out of it, right? Because price still may continue higher, since it's still hovering between that, you know, 4-hour order flow, right? So at that point, it is very important to get a confirmation that price is decelerating after mitigation here, because look, this was here pretty impulsive, even this one pretty impulsive, but after that, look, it went a bit to a indecisive period. It continued higher, but you know, those volumes definitely got lesser and lesser, right? And by that time, it was also almost 8 p.m. So yeah, I thought if this should happen, I will definitely consider a short from here. If not, well, it is what it is, right? So I basically set my alert at that point here. If I get a alert, then I will look if something like this is happened, right? But later on, I looked and noticed, okay, price indeed pushed higher. And now I moved my choke from here to here, because this was now my latest lightning bolt, right? That's why internal inducement / choke, because we are within a POI, right? So if price should take this one out, I would not look for buys. No, then I will have confirmed candle close choke. I will definitely look for sells at that point, right? According to my rules, concepts, and systems, obviously. So I now set my alert at this choke, and I went away, right? The next day I noticed, okay, price indeed tried to push a bit higher, but eventually, after London open, look here, right, like that, price started to show volume, right? And basically my alert did not went off during the night, so that's why I started out again with the 50-minute time frame, because some wonder, well, why is this not your inducement, right? Good question, because usually if I have something like this, right, like that, well, let's make it a straight line, but this high, right? So this would be usually our inducement, and this here usually our engineered liquidity, right? But in this case, why did I focus here on my inducement and not this one? Because this one was my higher time frame, major structure, 50-minute time frame choke to be confirmed, right? Because again, price was basically trading within that 4-hour POI. Only reason why, if that was not the case, then definitely this would have been, my inducement point, right? But yeah, that's basically why I mentioned that this is my choke. If price closes below it, it got confirmed that yes, it will presumably continue down to either liquidate that inducement here, or from the 4-hour, it was even this one. And look, if we add it to confluence with the 50-minute time frame, our, the lower time frame even, this one here, engineered liquidity, sitting very close to this here inducement, right? And yeah, definitely interesting to see what price action will do. But I was at that point just looking for entry strategies, not so much exit strategies per se. And at this point, yeah, this idea, I basically posted, right, and shared it with you guys. And yeah, I thought, okay, after close confirmation of choke, pullback, lower time frame inducement, and then liquidation, and then short until this here major inducement, right? And then buy if, obviously we get signals here. If I short, I nevertheless would still get out here, because there is no guarantee that price will come here, right? Because I did basically all of this here from a 15-minute time frame. I know in my back of my mind that this here was that 4-hour. So if I don't get any reaction here from the lower time frame, 3 minutes, after liquidation from the 50-minute time frame is liquidated, I will stay out and wait patiently until perhaps I get something here, right? Like that. And yeah, but nevertheless, exit will definitely be here, and then buy either here or here. It depends, right? So that was the idea. And now I noticed, hey, look at this. I was waiting here for that choke alert to be triggered, still on the 50-minute time frame. But look at this. Price here. Again, after London opened here, it rejected to take out this previous highest point, right? And yeah, I definitely found that interesting, because at that point, I noticed this here from the 50-minute time frame also liquidation. Price went lower. It did not break this low, So I thought, well, if price now pulls back to mitigate something here on the lower time frame, I will definitely look for shorts, right? Because then liquidation here and mitigation here will follow my rules, concepts, systems, right? After, this year, remember, 4-hour time frame, major inducement is taken out. So yeah, if price was about to do that, I was looking for shorts. If not, I will be cautious, right? Because price eventually still may do this, but it's more likely that it will do something like this again. Why? Because it topped out in that 4-hour POI after taking out 4-hour liquidation. It does not have to immediately, go down from here, right? It may mitigate also after liquidate from the higher time frame perspective. That's why. Nevertheless, I went to the lower time frame and immediately I spotted a very interesting price action and placed, without even thinking about it, my first sell limit order. Now in this case it's a limit order. Why? Because it's happening all at an extreme area, right? Oops. And also, like I noticed earlier, basically from the 15-minute time frame, this here happened, right? Liquidation, but look, before taking out this low, price came back to mitigate this area, right? So, and after noticing this move, before again, price breaking this low, it was coming back. Now in this leg, just like earlier here, structure-wise, there was liquidity created. Here, not. Right? And more often than not, if price does not create something to liquidate like this, we can expect at least that price will mitigate, because one single leg, there's nothing to be liquidated, right? Yeah, candle-wise, this is, definitely a pullback, but even if you add that to the concept, you will have liquidation here, mitigation here, and then what do we have here? Textbook entry type after liquidation and mitigation again, right? So basically this here happens on a candle-wise, level, whereas this here happened on a structure-wise level, right? And that's the beauty of the fractal nature. And yeah, I basically placed my limit order like that. And then eventually I got triggered, right? And yeah, price went down, but when price came back, I immediately duplicated this order within IC Markets, right? My broker platform. And before price went down, I got triggered of my identical 2-for-2 position of my first position, right? And price was coming down at that point, but later I noticed, whoa, it came back again to my, entry area. So I thought, let's have a look what the price will do. Okay, it was reacting. At this point, it, again, was pushing higher. And at this point, I thought, okay, we are now seeing our first black candle again. And it was at this point, I thought, well, perhaps it came back to mitigate this wick instead of the whole candle, right? So that's why at this point I thought, yeah, putting everything together, extreme area, higher time frame, lower time frame, everything adding and, aligning perfectly basically to me, because this here is nothing more than textbook to me, right? I don't have to think. It's just, reacting to it, right? And that's why I placed my fourth identical position. Wait a minute. Did I skip the third? Yeah. Okay. Indeed. Well, just a small correction. I don't know, because I think I'm missing one screenshot, or, before pasting it, I made this one, and that's why. But yeah, basically at this point, right? Yeah, I mean, I missed that screenshot, obviously, but look, here I noticed this candle-wise, pullback, right? I thought, okay, this here is again what? Candle-wise liquidity. That's why I thought, okay, if price comes back, I will again, enter from this area should, price still mitigate this one, right? Because basically here it wicked in and it retested it, and preferably I would like to see a close within, right? Then I have more confirmation, and especially if it rejects to go higher but instead lower. That's why I was, betting on that if price comes back, it will trigger my third position. So at this point I practically place my third position. Yeah, I just noticed it. Okay, and here price indeed came back, right? So that's why, I marked it blue for my third position. And then I was basically monitoring price. Will it go higher or lower, right? And in this case, indeed, it came here. After I noticed this black candle was about to close like that, I thought, okay, now I am more confident to place my fourth position, right? As in stop order. If price goes lower, then again, my fourth identical position to the first three will be triggered, right? And now, again, I can do it with way more confidence if instead it happens somewhere along the line here, right? Because technically price has every reason to go higher, perhaps to mitigate this area then, and then, like that, right? I mentioned it many times. So yeah, at this point, again, extreme area, higher time frame, 50-minute major structure, current time frame, entry time frame, everything aligns perfectly. So yeah, and that's why at this point I confirmed, my fourth order, and price indeed came down, triggered it, right? And then went down, and at this point, look, I practically was looking for the same, right? Here, again, liquidation. I thought, okay, price will do this and then go lower, or perhaps it will even mitigate something of this here, or even liquidate this here. That's why I left my stop loss as my previous 4 positions, same, right, of this position. So yeah, basically placed my entry based on that liquidity here. Price was already coming very close, right? So after noticing this, a push to the upside, I basically placed my 5th position, right? Did not get triggered, and then, kind of looked that price was indecisive. And at this point, I don't know if you have noticed it, but my entry first was based on this one, right? Because we had here that minor candle-wise liquidity created. However, at this point, I moved it obviously from here to here now, my entry, right? Slightly lesser reward, but now I notice a obvious structure-wise liquidity point, right? That's why. Now, I thought, okay, price will definitely not come back, but after noticing here, look, I would believe it was around this time here, 1431, that news came out. But in this case, news definitely was working in my favor. Yeah, so my chalk at this point was about to be confirmed. And let's see what happens. And yeah, as you can see, right, it definitely closed here below this choke point, like this one, right? And from that point, price, was definitely giving a reaction. It came back all the way there, and then it created here. And I noticed, well, basically it already, came back to liquidate this here. I thought, well, that's a entry missed, right? But at some point, price was pushing lower and lower and lower. And here it now again started to react, right? Now I have marked out this here as my inducement. Now to someone may look a bit, weird, because price did not, close below here from the 3-minute time frame, right? But if we go here to the 50-minute time frame, the same inducement point here, see? Now that's why this here may look like internal structure from where was it? Oh, the lower time frame, right? But as we can see here, obviously from the 50-minute time frame, it was basically this here, right? Before the news came out. When news came out, price pushed lower, right? Confirming our change of character. And that's why from the higher time frame, 15 minutes, right? I noticed here inducement. So that's why I was patiently waiting until price comes here to liquidate that area, right? So I removed basically my entries so I can show you guys better. But yeah, nevertheless, let's search where our, I believe somewhere, yeah. So at this point, that's why it looks a bit weird here on the current time frame, right? But nevertheless, it was an inducement point, and also my entry still, from earlier was still pending based on this one here, right? So if this here now is our higher time frame inducement, this here could be our lower time frame internal engineered liquidity, and this here internal inducement, right? But because this one aligns both here on the current time frame, 3-minute, but also here on the 50-minute, right? This one candle, and after that it, pulled back, took out that liquidity, and that was basically my time to enter utilizing this pending order, right? Because now we also had this last bullish push to the upside that already mitigated this wick, but also this candle here, right? So now I was focusing on this entire area as my potential order flow to create efficiency. And look, the order flow aligns also perfectly with my entry here, as in this here liquidity point, right? So I was confident enough not to move my entry from here to that inducement, but leave it there, right? Because I thought, well, both liquidation and mitigation is very close. And if that's the case, especially at an extreme area, it's more likely for that to happen. Now, again, was something like in the middle of a move, it does not have to mitigate anything. It may, right? But nobody knows. But yeah, nevertheless, I basically waited, right? To see what the price action will do. And at this point, I thought, well, it will leave, right? But I was not chasing price, because I thought either I will let it commit to me to see if indeed my rules, concepts, systems will play out in my favor. And if not, I will not chase it. I will look just for another opportunity, because there are a lot, right? Because imagine that if price now continues lower, then the lower time frame will create, again, lightning bolt, new liquidity here. So it may still come back to do that, right? So definitely not chasing it, but waiting patiently for any other, proper setup to go with. And if not, well, it is what it is, still running 4 positions, right? But now, look, price came back, it took out the liquidity, and, eventually, boom, it came, right? It triggered my position. And again, from this point, I was monitoring price action. And yeah, here, before price, went back again, because look at this, it took out the liquidity, right? And here, it kind of closed within this order flow, very minor, as you can see here, right? This gray candle in the middle. I mean, not the last, but second to last, right? And then after noticing this doji, I thought, yeah, definitely, no brainer. second identical position to this one, my fourth position. Fifth position, right? So at this point, yeah, my sixth position also got triggered, and price went down, went down, went down, and here again, it was very important to see indeed this to happen. So I set my alert. After this here alert got triggered, right, I was focusing on my not change of character, but on my confirmed BOS, right? Because from the higher time frame, remember, we had practically something like this, and these are basically internal structures from the lower time frame. But nevertheless, the higher time frame was definitely giving our lightning bolt, and that's why after higher time frame liquidation here and this here extreme mitigation from the lower time frame, by the way, also lower time frame liquidity along with the high time frame, this got liquidated here, and this low got confirmed, and now price takes out and closes below. So it confirms BOS, as in price is definitely willing to go lower, right? Because our shock already got confirmed here earlier. So at this point, yeah, I marked out my BOS, and I thought, well, let's have a look here. This was the pullback. So most recent liquidity points here. I again set my alert here because price still may do something like that, right? Perhaps in combination with the mitigation of the previous order flow to again create what? Efficiency. And that would be again a textbook entry tie, right? Should that happen. If not, well, 6 positions running, not bad. Every additional scale in from this point is just a bonus, right? So definitely glad so far with the positions I could catch. At this point, price started to retrace, and it went a bit higher. And at this point, yeah, I basically marked out here that inducement point, right? And this now being again our major inducement point from both 15 but also the 4-hour time frame, right? After this happened from the 4-hour, where was it? Something like this, right? Yeah, this here. I mean, I was, yeah, right? So 4-hour and 50 minutes, because now 15 internal inducements, major inducement here got taken out, and now this here, major inducement, this here, internal inducement from this swing, range low, range high, right? Yeah, I noticed, okay, let's see if price will have, enough volume to push it higher, to collect all the liquidity here, or will it continue down and create new inducement here? This one moving to here, right? And then perhaps we can utilize this area as a potential POI. Should price come back, liquidate here, and mitigate here, right? Like that. So again, we are looking for possible scenarios to happen, right? And basically here, price did create that inducement, because now we have the recent pullback here, right? So liquidity moved from here to here, right? And at that point, price now went lower and, basically did not take out the liquidity, right? So from the higher time frame, 15 minutes, this was now basically one single leg. Yeah, keep that in mind. This here is internal inducement. So price still may do this, give a reaction, but from the 15-minute time frame, this now also became that major inducement. So price still may do something like this. And if that happens, we can definitely look for a re-entry here instead of, here, or entering here by following our system. Internal inducement, we know, decisional. If we do get stopped out, we can re-enter here with more confidence and a way far, better reward, right? And now at this point, price pushed lower and then it started to retrace. And at that point, I went to the 15-minute time frame, and I was definitely noticing a reaction from this here green line, right? Because, yeah, somewhat we could definitely say that it was a valid candle-wise pullback within this here internal, like if this was major single leg, major single leg, major pullback. So within this major single leg, we had basically that, you know, internal liquidity candle-wise created here, right? So after noticing that, I was definitely keeping an eye on price action, but eventually price started again to push lower. And then I noticed, okay, it's a bit, you know, indecisive at this point, as in, will it go for that liquidity or will it push lower, right? And now later on, obviously, right, it pushed lower and lower. And then, you know, it again started to kind of range, right? And, you know, at this point, I noticed, okay, New York session is about to close with 21 minutes to go. So I was definitely considering of closing my positions early, right? Just before the weekend. And yeah, I could have held my positions all the way here, but, you know, I was running 6 positions already and definitely, you know, made some decent amount of profits, as in these 4 positions were practically taking with 0.05% of my total account, as in $150 risk per position times 4, right? And then, you know, obviously times 4 positions times X amount of reward, right? And these ones, I had obviously a more, you know, structure-wise confirmation at that point. So that's why these 2 positions I have entered with 0.1% of my total account balance, as in $300 risk per position times 2 positions times X amount of reward, right? So I was definitely, you know, considering closing my positions early. And let's have a look. At this point, we had, I believe, yeah, with just 10 minutes to go, I was noticing that price, you know, will it get here, yes or no? And eventually at 10 o'clock at my time, you know, and New York session closed, I basically noticed here this price 0.077, right? And I just got out here, closed my positions, and yeah, basically here I adjusted my, you know, position tool within TradingView also, and here are the profits, right? Eventually, so here, this was my initial target. It was, you know, 15R, I believe, for this one, and eventually, I believe 8 or potential 9R for this one. But, you know, I thought it is what it is, right? Let me get out here. And again, definitely not disappointed with my profits. So, yeah, basically made $9,000, you know, with these 6 positions in a period of, well, I believe it was 12 o'clock until, yeah, in a matter of 10 hours. I mean, definitely not bad. So yeah, that's basically it, family. A quick detailed recap and breakdown of my EURUSD session. And yeah, from this point on, you know, it should definitely be interesting to see what EURUSD will do in the coming week. And I will definitely look for buys, just as I showed you guys with the potential ideas from both 4-hour but also 50-minute time frame, right? Just, structure-wise, I will wait until those major structure, higher time frame, 50 minutes, will be either liquidated and or mitigated, so I can practically utilize my entry criteria from the lower time frames. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I wish everyone a blessed Sunday with their families and loved ones, and I will definitely get you guys in the coming week. And as always, trade responsible and trust your system. One love, family.